Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to the Winning Drive. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Pleased to be joined by lifetime Longhorn young prodigy CJ Vogel, as well as our coach, former high school football coach at Belton, Capel, Brownwood, Rotan, Burnett. Also played college football at Abilene Christian, coached there in multiple stints. Also was on the University of Texas staff for multiple head coaches. It is Coach Bob Shipley joining us. What's going on, Coach? How you doing?
What's up?
We got a lot to get into, Coach. I want to get your thoughts about actually the announcement recently that Coach Mack Brown, at 73 years old, has said he wants to keep coaching. Said he still got, a lot of energy. Say he still got a lot of things that he wants to achieve as a coach. So we'll get into that because I want to get your thoughts about. A lot of Longhorn fans have been talking about that, him as a former Longhorn coach himself. We'll also get into Sark's weekly media availability. Had his Zoom availability earlier today. My man CJ got a chance to get on that Zoom call. So we'll get a chance to talk about some of the things that Sark had to say there about their upcoming opponent, the Kentucky Wildcats. You did have the availability report yesterday. We'll get back into that. We do have a finalist. One of the Longhorns is a finalist for a national award. We'll jump into that conversation too. Of course, we will be previewing the Kentucky matchup coming up this weekend. Also, lots of recruiting nuggets from my man CJ. We'll talk about the official visits and some of the recruits who may be on campus this weekend for that Kentucky matchup. We'll dive into that too a little bit coming up on the show. All right, gentlemen, let's dive into it. Of course, your questions and your comments, whatever you have to throw out there, we'll answer as many of them as we can. Super chats can jump to the front of the line. You can interrupt the show at any time. You guys know how that works, so we appreciate you guys joining us no matter where you're joining us from. All right, guys, getting closer and closer to kickoff of the Texas-Kentucky game. Are you guys feeling more confident or a little more anxious as you get close to this matchup? I remember before the Arkansas game, I think everybody was feeling very confident following that Florida matchup. Texas was going to score a lot of points. Look at what Arkansas looked like versus Ole Miss and all those things. And turns out a coach say that's why they play the game, Coach. So what are your thoughts now, Coach? I'll throw it to you first. Getting closer and closer to the Texas-Kentucky game. What are your thoughts about what you're going to see on Saturday?
Well, I think, we might have got ahead of ourselves a little bit last week. We kind of drank Kool-Aid, but I was too. But I still, I knew it was going to be tough. I just did not expect Quinn to have, kind of a roller coaster game. But I still feel good about this week. I know that, obviously, Kentucky's going to play us well defensively. As you talked about many times, another defensive-minded head coach, that we're playing against. And so, but I think I'm feeling good. I don't know point-wise. I don't, I'm thinking maybe, 27-14, 28-14, something like that. I don't think it's going to be a real high-scoring game. But and I don't know that they would get 14 points. But, they're playing in their, what is this, the 11th game of the season. So, it's no time to hold anything back. If you're Kentucky, you go out with a bang and try to knock off, one of the top-rated teams in the conference.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same boat. Coach, I might have been over my skis a little bit last week. I'll admit that. Drinking the Kool-Aid. I might have been drunk off the Kool-Aid last week. So, no, I think, again, that Arkansas game, for whatever the reason, Texas didn't play up to its standards. But, hey, that's life on the road in the SEC, right? I think that's what we've learned, right? We're all learning what this conference can be like. And what this conference is like on a week-to-week is when you play a team like Kentucky, it's no guarantee that it's going to be a game like you would expect against a team like Kentucky, and that's exactly what Ole Miss figured out earlier this year. Georgia squeaked by a point as well. So, listen, I don't think it'll be one of those games where it's a blowout, right? The line is 20 points from Vegas. That was the same line against Florida. The difference is while Florida was getting dinged up and had a lot of guys out, Kentucky's getting a lot of guys back. And I think that's going to factor in significantly to the outcome of this game. To me, I don't want to say it's going to be another nail biter, but I'd be shocked if this is a game where I'm looking at it with a 25-point lead or something like that early in the second half. I just think that they're a gritty team that knows how to stick around in close games. So it should be another cat fight, if you will, later on this Saturday. And that's one that Texas will need to have under its belt for confidence to find ways to win in any type of situation and environment.
Yeah, I think as we get, as we now have 10 games of a sample size of this team, I think our prediction, our expectations for this team and some of our predictions too have, drastically shifted.
Changed.
And,
yeah.
And I think now, I'm not saying they're just more realistic, but now I think we know who the team is. We know the defense is going to show up. So it's going to be a defensive struggle if you expect that Kentucky defense, which travels, by the way. I mean, when they played Tennessee, I believe that Tennessee game was on the road for them, and they played Tennessee tough on the road. This is a team that defense for them, I think it will travel. You go look at that game they played at Ole Miss. I mean, that was at Ole Miss. That's a tough place to play to pull off that upset too. So I think the defense will travel. Texas defense, no doubt, that defense comes to play week in and week out. It is proven. It is the best, one of the best defenses in the country, if not the best defense in the country. And we're just not sure how the offense matches up with the Kentucky defense. And I think one thing that we underestimate is matchups in football. Some teams just match up really well with other teams. You see that in the SEC week in and week out. And who knows that the Kentucky defense, I got a lot of respect for what I've seen on film from that group. And so does Sark, by the way. Sark was talking to, as a matter of fact, Sark said, Coach, that he tried to hire Mark Stoops away from Mike back in the day when they were in the Pac-12. I believe he said, he says that he tried to hire Mark Stoops away from his brother Mike in Arizona when Sark was head coach at Washington. So he's been a fan of the Stoops guys. And didn't he try to bring in a Stoops earlier when he was doing his coaching hires there, guys? But am I mistaken about that? Wasn't there, right?
I believe you're right. There were some rumors of it.
Yeah, rumors. I don't know if it ever got substantiated, but I believe he wanted to bring. And then, he almost hired Mike Stoops. That's right, CB. And then I think the fans acted such a fool on social media about the hire. I believe Sark might have changed his mind. I don't know if you ever seen anything like that, Coach.
Well, no, I do remember back in the dark years where the president had to go with the head coach to Tulsa to interview an offensive coordinator, trying to talk to Texas after he had turned us down. That was a nightmare. Few years there.
I remember that. Mr. Sterling Gilbert, if I'm not mistaken, was that? Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. I remember that. Yes, sir. I remember. Speaking of the old days, Coach, I know you obviously have a lot of respect and know Coach Brown really well. What do you think about the announcement recently? We'll get back to the Texas football conversation here in a moment. But the recent announcement by Coach Brown, I believe he said it on Sirius XM, that he's not done coaching. A lot of people thought Mack Brown would be ready to retire at one point, I believe, after that the James Madison loss where it was like 70-50 or something like that. Mack said, if I don't get things fixed, that I'll retire. And I think he's kind of throwing it out there. But a lot of people started speculating maybe he will retire. That is not going to be the case. What are your thoughts about 73-year-old Mack deciding he still got some coaching in him?
Well, there's some guys that's all they do. A good example of that is a guy at Highland Park High School, Randy Allen, who tried to retire for a few weeks and he was miserable. And so he came back and asked for his job. And I know Randy Allen's family well, and they'll say, he has no hobbies. He doesn't hunt, he doesn't fish, he doesn't play golf, he doesn't do honeydews, he doesn't do anything except think, eat, breathe, sleep, football. That's it. So I think Mack Brown has earned the right to coach as long as he wants to, as long as it's not, detrimental to the team, which it's certainly not. I don't know of anybody that can get in and do what he's done at UNC the last few years, but he's earned the right to coach. Like I said, as long as he's mentally and physically able to do it, he's one of the best to ever do it. And so I appreciate him and what he's done for me and my family and for the university. And no, he'll tell you, he'd be the first one to tell you he didn't do everything just right. But but he is loyal to his team and to universities, I think, and I think as long as he'll have him, he'll keep coaching. I don't understand that personally, because I try to be a more well-rounded person where I have other interests and other things that I do, and, you know, have a life and grandkids and all that stuff. And I'm sure he does too, but they just have to come up to see him at the field house, I guess. But
it's so crazy. It's so crazy because now we talk about the college coaching, like the job being harder than ever before. I mean, to the point where, you know, a lot of people speculate that Nick Saban was like, well, transfer portal, NIL, you know what, guys, I'm good. I still could put in some GOAT years here, but I'm good. That's some of the speculation by him. And we agreed it is harder than ever before. And Mack at 73 is deciding not for him. That is, to me, I'm with you, Coach. I mean, he's been coaching almost 50 years. How long did you coach, Coach? He's been coaching like almost 50 years. Total.
Yeah, no, I coached about 37. And that's
a long time.
Yeah, that was a lot of years.
That's a lot of years.
But I always saw myself, you know, being with my grandkids and, you know, being able to do things with my kids and grandkids and all that stuff. And
yeah,
that stuff's important to me. Not that it's not important to him, obviously, but, you know, at some point there comes a time where you say, okay, I've been investing so much time in all these other kids' lives. It's time for me to invest in my own family. And so that's the decision that I made. But you know, I think Bill Belichick, I think given the opportunity, he'd still be coaching right now, because that's what he does. He does that and dates young women, apparently. So, I mean, he's certainly young at heart. I guarantee you that.
Hey, it's still going on, Coach. They've been together for a little minute. I thought that was just going to be a little spring fling. Belichick likes that thing. He's
yeah. I'm not going to say anything else.
Yeah, it's too early in the show, Coach, for you to have one of them.
I don't need Matthew doing that. No, it's not.
Yeah, there we go.
I didn't. That was a little premature there, Matthew. Something that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, though, Coach. I agree with that. I would like this. I don't know anything. I know Mack really well, and I know Sally, his lovely wife, really well. Something tells me Sally would rather Mack retire too. Just for me, just knowing her, that she'd rather him retire too, because it's just stressful. It's a stressful job, man. Stressful job, especially for 73. So I hope Mack's doing what's best. I know Mack's trying to do what's best for the guys. Hope he's doing what's best for him though too. Hope that.
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you what. Sally probably got sick of him when he left the Texas job. And like, would you find something to do? You know. And Mack, he just doesn't have a lot of hobbies, you know. He loves ball, and mainly he loves kids, and he loves impacting kids' lives. And like I said, in my mind, he's earned the right to coach as long as he wants to coach.
Absolutely.
Yep. And I think that's the plan. I think that's ultimately why it's going to play out however Mack decides it's going to play out, because he's the greatest football coach in North Carolina Tar Heel history, and he's gonna have a statue there or something if he doesn't already have some statue there or something like that. And I think they want to make sure that they do it the right way. And Mack's gonna decide how that's done. All right, thanks, Coach. I appreciate your thoughts on that. I want to get that out of the way. All right, let's get to Super Chat, and then we'll get to a couple of questions. And then I want to get to some of Sark's comments. And also get to talking about some Texas-Kentucky preview here. But Bixby Horn says, love on Texas football. Love OTF. Thank you, brother. Love you too. Said, listen to every broadcast. Thank you for keeping me informed on my Horns from here in Bixby, Oklahoma. Oh, that's right, man. Behind enemy lines.
Enemy lines.
Yeah, no doubt. That's tough right there. All right, this one comes from Ashley. Ashley, thank you very much. She says, who would we want to see in the SEC championship if we make it? CJ, I'll throw it to you. Who's the most favorable matchup, I guess, for Texas in the SEC title game, the way things could potentially play out?
It's interesting, right? Because you have to look at individual position matchups, specifically on the defensive line. I think Georgia's a team you don't want to face. I think Ole Miss is a team you don't want to face, especially with the way they've been able to complement that defensive line and that front seven with Jackson Dart on the front side. Look, Alabama is a team that still has maybe some identity issues on either side of the football. I think that they figured it out recently as of late. But Tennessee, to me, is the team that I think everybody wants to sit back and say, yeah, I'd love to see Tennessee in this game. And that's not a knock disrespectfully on Tennessee. It's just, hey, Georgia's really darn good. Alabama's really darn good. Ole Miss is really darn good. And Texas, still in a position to make it, which I don't think anybody will be complaining about right now. So I look at Tennessee and say, hey, if there's a opportunity or a path for Texas to face the Volunteers, that to me is the most favorable of anybody that remains on this, sheet when it comes to guys, teams still alive for the SEC championship game.
Yeah, like I said, getting back to it's all about matchups. I think we ought to be like Georgia is a tough matchup for Texas, as we saw. But Texas can be a tough matchup for a lot of the teams, especially with that defense Texas has. And also, I agree with you about that Tennessee point there. Thanks for that, Ashley. We appreciate it. Tex-Mex Horn says, good afternoon, fellas. If Sark never put in Arch for Quinn in the UGA game, would the pressure / noise around Quinn be as loud? Once Sark pulled Quinn, he opened Pandora's box. Coach, your thoughts about is that true? Is that why we are now there's even more of a critical eye on Quinn, even though you're looking at last year's stats compared to this year's stats, negligible difference, if any, and still you're winning, you're 9-1. Are we more critical just because we know the option behind Quinn now is a little bit more, realistic now? Now it seems like now Longhorn fans can reach out and touch it. That is now right there in front of their face, that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, I think so. Arch had a shot, and there wasn't a significant change when he came in the game. I don't know. I just feel like that everybody has a certain level of expectation for every position. And that's one we certainly had high expectations for coming into the season. And with the roller coaster that it's been in terms of Quinn's consistency, that alone is caused. And obviously, if you didn't have, an Arch Manning sitting beside you, you probably wouldn't hear as much noise. But I do feel like that if Quinn does get pulled, it's, he's had more than enough opportunities and chances to come back and lead this team to the championship we were all hoping for, at least the conference championship. But still, as they say, you are what the film says you are, and if Sark really feels like we get into a situation in the game that we have to win, and there's a chance because of the way he's playing that we may not win, I think that's something that Quinn needs to own. If Quinn's not doing what it takes for us to win championships, that's the point that we're at. That's the point we're at in the season. We're not preseason. We're not middle. We don't have any room to spare. Zero room to spare. And so I think if he does get pulled, it's because of Quinn's own inconsistency and not the fact that, obviously you wouldn't pull him if you didn't think the guy behind him could lead you back to victory. That's insane to think that you could, pull him out and put, some walk-on guy in there or something. But anyway, I think it's to be expected. This staff and this team and this fan base expects to win, and they expect championships. And to do it, sometimes the staff has to make tough decisions. And not everybody's going to be happy about those decisions. You just hope when you roll the dice, it shows up aces. Well, not aces, snake eyes, maybe.
Aces. Oh, no. I'll say, I do agree with the Tex-Mex Horn that when Sark pulled Quinn, he did open Pandora's box. He opened the, now the conversation or the controversy, if you will, it became real when he decided to pull him, even though Sark continues to say, and at the time also said, Quinn's the guy, and we're fully behind Quinn. Hell, I saw Jadae Barron wearing a shirt yesterday that had Quinn's face on it. I lived through the Sims Applewhite controversy. Maybe I should have had a shirt made with Sims' face on it or something like that. But this is not a controversy on the 40 acres and with that team. It's just, it may be one in the narrative and now the discourse with the fans on the outside looking in. But there is no controversy with the team at all. When I was actually playing, it was a controversy outside and inside locker room. But like I said, I think Mack Brown, coach, he kept going back and forth, and therefore I kept fueling that controversy. Sark's not doing that, or at least he only did it once. If he does it again, it's gonna be hard to go back. I will say that. hard to go back to Quinn if you end up benching him again. I think the plan would be if you bench him again, you ain't going back to him. Yeah, no matter what the situation.
Yeah, I think the Pandora's box was opened after the injury first occurred, right? Because that was when you really started to see what Arch could do. And you immediately step into a game you weren't prepared to be the starter and you throw for 5 touchdowns. Everybody's thinking, oh, you got something here, right? See 2 other games, they look good. The offense is explosive. And then obviously Quinn comes back. He's your guy. And there's no debating about that right now. But that's when the Pandora's box was open. So fortunately, and hopefully Quinn has 2 more opportunities in the regular season to kind of put that to the side, and start playing some really dominant football the way that we kind of expected at the beginning of the year. And that's where, again, to your point all week, Rod, you got to rely on this defense. Just play smart football, take care of the rock, and kick on every single possession. Punts, field goal attempts, PATs. That's how you win football games in key situations. And luckily, Quinn's been very good at protecting the football, at least not putting it in harm's way on his throws, tips, overthrows, whatever. I mean, tips are another story, but when it comes to decision-making, almost to a fault, Quinn's been very good with protecting the rock this year.
Yep. No, I agree with that. All right. We'll come back to some of the questions. Let's thank one of our sponsors quick before we dive into some other topics. Our friends at Duck Camp. They've done a great job with their fall collection. Matter of fact, I got a few items from their fall selection. Go check it out for yourself at duckcamp.com. But they also have a color that is very close to burnt orange. I assure you, really close. Matter of fact, I've already worn it here on the channel. So if you're looking for that, you can find that over at Duck Camp. They got some of their items in that specific shade of burnt orange. But Duck Camp produces premium outdoor goods for the outdoor spirit in all of us. Duck Camp is dedicated to providing the best outdoor goods so you can outdoor good, whether you're an avid hunter or you prefer fishing, or you're like me and you like the camaraderie of the campsite and the campfire. Duck Camp is a brand that understands the culture of outdoor living and the good times and good friends that come along with living an outdoor lifestyle. Go check out their new fall selection today at duckcamp.com. That's duckcamp.com. Thank you very much to Duck Camp for sponsoring the winning drive and being part of the On Texas football family. Mike has a super chat. No, it works. Mike jumps to the front of the line. Thank you, Mike. We appreciate it. Says, there seems to be a lot of consternation from fans over Sark's quote about not forgetting what the last decade looked like. What were your thoughts? Yeah. So I don't know if we have the exact quote. CJ, you were there. So you probably can put it into, I don't know, you probably heard the question and also the entire answer as opposed to us trying to frame it and paraphrase. What were your thoughts? And first of all, try to sum up for the people exactly what was said that has some fans a little bit, a little bit upset, maybe a little bit offended by something Sark said.
Well, I mean, the question was, do you hope and do you think that Quinn is taking in senior day, what could be his final game at DKR, to the max? Like, is that something that you believe he is enjoying? And Sark said, yeah, absolutely. I hope that is something that not just Quinn, but all of these seniors and all of these Texas fans are realizing is, hey, it's been quite a journey to get to where you are. You made a college football playoff a year ago when there was only 4 teams. You won the Big 12 championship game. You're 9-1 for the second straight year. Sit back and enjoy the ride, right? Because it's not easy, right? Georgia has 2 losses. Alabama has 2 losses. Tennessee has 2 losses. College football is in a weird spot right now. But one thing that's remained constant in Austin over the last 2 years is, hey, they found ways to win when it mattered. And that's something I think shouldn't be taken for granted. And look, don't forget what the last decade looked like. That's something that he threw out there. And I don't hate the comment because, hey, Texas lost to Kansas twice in the last decade, right? Mm-hmm. There were years where Texas was looking at, maybe we'll see a bowl this year. And that shouldn't have ever been the case in Austin, but that's the reality of it. So to be 9-1 through the first 10 games of the season for the second straight year with everything still ahead for this team, I think is more Sarkisian and maybe some of the team and program saying, hey, let's take a deep breath and enjoy where we're at right now. We got a lot of work ahead of us, but hey, we got to where we are for a reason. Let's make sure that this is taken in and rejoice to an extent before we finish out the regular season.
Totally agree. What are your thoughts, Coach? I agree with that. What are your thoughts, Coach?
I have no problem with it. What is there to disagree? Is anybody out there that's a faithful Longhorn fan, do they like what happened over the last decade? I mean, was the Charlie Strong years fun? Were the Tom Herman years fun? Let me tell you, I work for both of those guys. I mean, I'm out there killing myself. No, that was a bad joke. But I'm just saying, I was part of both of those staffs for a little bit. And, yeah, it wasn't fun. I mean, we had some moments. We had some nice moments. Certainly 2018 when in the Sugar Bowl over Georgia was a big moment. But overall, I don't think anybody is thrilled about what happened over the last decade at Texas. That's why everybody is so excited about what's going on now and have such high expectations, because we have not had that. We hadn't been there in so long that there's a lot of Texas fans that weren't Texas fans or weren't old enough to be Texas fans the last time we played for a national championship. I mean, that was a while. And so I don't have a problem with the statement at all. Don't forget, yeah, we've come a long way, and we're not about to start sliding back into the realm of mediocrity.
Okay, Matt, was he talking to the fans, CJ, or talking about the players to not forget what the last decade looked like?
More so to the team, hey, enjoy the ride, enjoy the moment, enjoy where you're at, because it wasn't always like this. I think, more so than that, though, that in proxy way kind of trickles down to everybody, right?
I agree. To
the team in this conversation was directed towards making sure that his team understood where they were at.
Yes, I agree with that. And like I said, I think overall, you're right. It's kind of a message to the family, the Longhorn family. Like, hey, guys, I know we like, and we'll start calling it crying from a yacht, which is, I like, right? We got first world problems now in Texas. We lost to Maryland twice. Oh, please, guys, let's not just start reliving the low point for Texas football.
How low do you want to go?
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
Let's not even talk about Kansas, okay?
Yeah, that's CJ's fault, because CJ brought up the Kansas thing. That is that is the lowest point. We agree, right? That's the lowest of the low points in the last decade and a half, and there were a lot of them. Trust me, I remember them. But no, I agree. Listen, and this is what I think. I don't know if they're feeling some of the criticism on social media. I'm sure the guys have observed some of it about, Quinn and his inconsistency and that thing. And Mack Brown had to deal with this too, kind of going back to Mack. And I always say this about Mack Brown. At one point in Texas, if you're good enough, you earn the right to be a prisoner of your own excellence. If you're good enough. That's just the reality of being the head coach at Texas. I remember I played at Texas. We'd win 11 games. Still didn't meet the standard. Why? Because you didn't beat Oklahoma, didn't play for championships, and poor Mack Brown's like, I won 11 games. They're like, yeah, Mac, you need to beat Bob Stoops, though. There's always a but. Sark, unless you win it all, there's always going to be a but for Texas fans. That's just the way we are. I've been around Texas fans for forever. I love Texas fans, close to my heart, and that's why I always say Mac ended up being a prisoner of his own excellence. Double-digit win seasons. None of that mattered to Longhorn fans. They were like, yeah, what have you done for me lately? But, yeah, nice season. But you didn't beat Oklahoma. But you didn't win the Big 12 title. But you didn't win the national title. And that's going to be the same for Sark. I am not saying it's right, but that's the reality of Texas. That's why the standard is always so high. It is a really high standard. And even he has said the standard is the standard. So, if that is a message for Longhorn fans going to always be crying from a yacht. Unless it's a national title season, they always going to do that. Hey, you know what? God bless them. Okay? Because if not, that is what to me shows the passion and dedication and commitment of Longhorn fans. They're never satisfied. The team can't be satisfied because Longhorn fans ain't satisfied. Hey, the defense is number one defense in the country. Yeah, though, what about that interior D-line? I'm not sure about that. What about that run game? What about number 3 in the country? Yeah, but Quinn, man, we might need to bench him. Like, this is why I love Longhorn fans, because they are always looking for a way to improve the team. Like, how can we get better? How can we be the absolute best? And so Sark's got to get used to that too, and the players. But they are right now, I would say they handle that pressure of living up to that standard really well. And that is, trust me, I played under that pressure. It's a lot of pressure. It will crack some guys. It will. And it will fracture teams. And it did not with this group, man. They've lived up to that pressure and played really well under it. And I'll give Sark a lot of credit for that too. So, yeah, crying from a yacht. I'd rather cry from a yacht than what we did the last decade and a half. All day, every day. So keep it going. Drowning next to a yacht.
Yeah. Crying my John boat, what I'm doing.
Seriously.
One of those little paddle boats you can rent at the skate park. But I'm crying in. Now we're in a yacht, baby.
Oh, man. All right. Getting back to the questions here. Drew. Thank you, Drew. Says, Rod, can senior day along with everything else be a huge distraction for our guys on Saturday? These seniors need a huge appreciation. It's more like, yeah, I mean, we talked about this. It's more like a farewell night because it's more than just seniors now. You got guys who are leaving via the transfer portal. You got guys who are leaving because hopefully going to the NFL as underclassmen. It's not a distraction. It is just, it's definitely a break in your routine and your regimen as a player. Usually you got a certain schedule. You like to keep a certain routine. And when you kind of gradually get into your game mindset, you got an alter ego you're probably going to be for game day as opposed to the guy who goes and kisses mama and, loves on your nieces and nephews and little cousins. Like that's different. Then they're on the field with flowers and mama's crying because she's proud of that. So it is just very different. I think if with maturity, you can handle it, but it adds another emotional charge. And I always say emotional charges are really emotionally charged environments are just tough for some players to deal with. Some players handle it better than others. And some players, it makes them kind of volatile, handling that kind of emotion right before the game. They might be crying before the game, like straight up. Mama's crying on the field. You end up crying, like, why the hell am I crying now on the field? Damn it, I didn't want to cry before the game. And boom, you end up crying out there. Usually you're in the mindset before the game, and thinking about, competition and thinking about your alignment and your assignment and trying to get in a mindset to crush and vanquish and defeat your opponent. And yet you might be sobbing on the sideline because of a senior day or, that night. So it is just different. I think if considering how good Texas is and the leadership they have, I don't think it'll be a distraction. It's just a very different routine than you're used to. And I for one, listen, it was a great time, but I didn't like it because hell, at one time it was the Aggies, right? Sometimes that's a serious game. And it's like, man, I did not want to have any added emotion to an already emotionally charged environment. So I'm glad it's just Kentucky. Not that Kentucky's a pushover or anything, but it's not like a rivalry game on top of being senior night and all that kind of stuff too for the guys. So, all right, thank you, Drew. We appreciate the question there. How about this one from Texas Chick 01? Says, can y'all feel the love from the other SEC teams awaiting our failure? I do enjoy it so. It is interesting that just looking at all the power conferences a little bit, guys, that some of the newcomers to these power conferences are already the leaders of the conferences. And I don't know what that said about, Coach, our perception of the SEC and the Big Ten and the Pac-12. But a lot of the new additions to these conferences, the power conferences, they're already playing really well. They adapted extremely well and quickly. Not all of them, but at least some at the top. What does that say about, the parity in college football? Is there just more parity than we think and that we ever thought in college football? And maybe some of the, the realignment has proven that?
Yeah, realignment, portal, NIL, I think all of it's kind of evened out what we thought otherwise might separate, right? The rich get richer. That hasn't necessarily been the case because you've seen guys who otherwise would be waiting 2 to 3 years to get on the field at these top schools now go be instant impact guys elsewhere. Or you're seeing big-time recruitments out of a certain region that feeds into a big-time program now staying home to go be the hometown hero because that NIL package is comparable or competitive with that of the big time program. So it's fun, right? And I mean, what would you expect if you're a Tennessee fan, an Ole Miss fan, Alabama, Georgia fan, a Florida fan, and Texas comes in year one and all of a sudden they're up at the top of the, I would be pissed off, if Texas was still in the Big 12 and all of a sudden you see Missouri come back in and Nebraska, and they're the two teams fighting it out at the top of the conference, I'd be mad. Yeah, because all I've heard about the last 10 to 15 years is we don't need that conference. We're superior. Y'all, we don't need you guys. And then just to come in and be the top dog in the conference, it would piss me off a little bit, right? And I think that's the expectation. Texas knew that they wasn't going to be liked coming into the conference, but hey, fortunately and thankfully for Steve Sarkisian and his staff, they got this team where it needed to be from a talent perspective to come in and compete right away. Now the job's not done, and they obviously have to go out and win 2 big important games in the regular season still remaining. But because that they were able to come in prepared, that's why this conversation is being had. And it's certainly, paying off in terms for the Longhorns, I would say.
Yeah.
I think there were a lot of comments and a lot of thoughts and commentary from other people in the SEC before we got in, because there were, we won the Big 12 our last year, but other than that, we were pretty mediocre. Top half, but we weren't playing at an SEC level, okay? And they saw that, and we would beat, Georgia, for example, in the Sugar Bowl, and they're like, yeah, but you play a Georgia type team every week. Well, I understand that, but give me a break. A&M didn't play Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss. Who else did they not play this year?
They missed all the powers, a lot of the powers. They've been playing LSU this year. They played LSU
just hit or miss. But here's the thing that happened to us, the same thing that happened to A&M. A&M was in mediocrity in the Big 12 as well before they went to the SEC. But what did the announcement going to the SEC do for A&M recruiting? It did exactly the same thing that the announcement when Texas was announced they were going to be joining the SEC. The recruiting did the same thing. It took off to a new level. There's no way we would be at the top of the SEC right now, had we not had a few years to recruit with the SEC. Everybody knowing that that's going to be our future. So we got a lot of players we wouldn't have gotten had we stayed in the Big 12. So, but I do think there are a lot of people licking their chops waiting for us to trip up again, just because all the smack talk that was y'all aren't SEC ready, you're not SEC, it's and they see that we are SEC ready. And I don't know that we're ready to dominate the SEC. We didn't dominate it this year, but we certainly have a chance to win it. And I think that really ticks a lot of people off. Exactly like if we were still in the Big 12 and BYU comes in the first year and beats us all. Yeah, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
Earn the right. You hadn't earned the right. You hadn't been here long enough.
Yeah, and it is also, when you start looking at it, everybody, and this is, I don't know if you've heard, Coach, the narrative is now that it's just a down year in the SEC. LSU's down, and all these schools are down. Nick Saban's gone. Georgia's not what they used to be. It's just it's a down year. That's why Texas is able to.
Well, the reason some of those teams are down is because Texas got a lot of recruits that they would have gotten.
Yeah, good point, Coach.
I mean, and then Oklahoma, and you start spreading those recruits out over 2 new teams, that's 20 or 25, 30 players per team that probably would have gone somewhere else in the SEC.
That's a good point, though, about the bump in recruiting. Speaking of recruiting, let's take a break from the questions. We'll come back to some of them, guys, so keep them coming. CJ, I want to ask you about recruiting. The Longhorns, obviously, with a home game this weekend. There's some official visits that I know you guys have been talking about over there on ontexasfootball.com, and also maybe some surprise nuggets for the folks out there about in the recruiting realm. What you got for the people as it relates to recruiting this weekend for the Texas-Kentucky game?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see if Zion Williams, the defensive lineman out of Lufkin, makes it down to campus. Of course, LSU doing everything they can to keep him away from Texas, just as they're trying to prevent Cade Phillips, the other 5-star cornerback, expected to be on campus this weekend, from making the trip to Austin. So we'll see. Right now, I would expect Cade Phillips to make it, and Zion probably at a 50-50. I don't believe in official visits in the cards right now, but again, who knows what might happen from now until Saturday. Also worth keeping an eye on Kellen Wiley, the linebacker out of Florida. Right now, the Gators trying to do everything they can to put a wrench in the side of the Longhorns recruiting efforts in 2025. Kellen Wiley is the guy that they're now trying to get onto campus in Gainesville. Wiley had reportedly, or at least tweeted out last night, that he's getting really close to a decision. So Florida, again, last-ditch effort in my eyes to get him away from wherever that decision would lead him. And right now, I think that would be to the Texas Longhorns. Jamie French will be on campus this weekend. Elijah Barnes will be on campus this weekend. And Texas doing everything they need to in Nick Townsend's recruitment to keep him locked in as well. So a lot going on in 2025. Of course, we're about 13 days away from locking everything up in the 2025 class, putting the bow on the final classes. I would still expect about 4, maybe 5 additional people or prospects added to this class when it's all said and done before then, just where and how are those dominoes going to fall, we'll wait and see until the end of this weekend.
There is a super chat, and you just addressed like half of this, so I want to throw it out to you for the other one. Arnold, thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Says, what do we think about the LSU commit visitors? You brought up one of those being Kate Phillips. And will there be transfers we may want from there also? Oh, good point about that. Know about the transfers.
We'll see about transfers, right? It's one of those situations where you can't really predict transfers until a coach gets fired or a player announces that they're headed out. So Texas has been doing tremendous work in at least lining up a big board of guys that they would like if they were to enter the portal. That's part of the job of the player personnel department. Some of your scouts inside the building is to say, hey, if this guy enters the portal, would we have a spot? Would we like to pursue? Where does he kind of stack up against some of the guys that are coming in from the high school ranks as well? Texas has been doing their research on a number of guys, and right now, look, LSU has talented players, maybe not so many on the defensive side of the ball anymore. It's kind of interesting how that's worked out under Brian Kelly. But point being, they're expected to lose a lot, right? Kyron Lacey to the NFL draft, Garrett Nussmeier to the NFL draft, Emory Jones, Will Campbell. That's essentially their entire offense with the exception of Caden Durham. So it'll be interesting what remains and who departs from LSU. But right now, of course, Texas will be doing their due diligence on whoever is available to enter the portal, or at least rumored to enter the portal.
All right, good stuff there, CJ. Thank you for the super chat, Owner. We appreciate it. Let's thank another one of our sponsors, Hardgrove Roofing, before we move on to some more of the questions. Hardgrove Roofing has offices all over Louisiana, Arkansas, and, of course, the great state of Texas, including Austin, Texas. For superior, reliable service when it comes to your roof, reach out to our friends over at Hardgrove Roofing. They have a partnership with lifetime Longhorns Bert Auburn, as well as Stevie Lee. We have Stevie Lee coming on with us on Mondays, courtesy of our good friends over at Hardgrove Roofing. They are the most pro burnt orange roofing company out there. Call them today for a free roof inspection. That's right, free 99. You won't get a better price than that. Also, you can reach out to them at hardgroveroofing.com and know who's on your roof. If you got any concerns, any issues with your roof, you shouldn't be up there. All right, it's dangerous up there. Leave it to the professionals over at Hardgrove Roofing. Thank you very much to Hardgrove Roofing for sponsoring the winning drive. I really appreciate them and their support. Let me ask you guys about the first finalist that the Longhorns have right now announced for a national award. It was announced that Kelvin Banks is a finalist for the Lombardi Trophy. That was announced for the Outland. Actually, no, I take that back. It is for he actually is for the Lombardi. So I don't know what. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Did I miss that? All right. Anyway, but he is a finalist for the Lombardi. In case you didn't know, I know he was a semifinalist, but here it says he's a finalist along with Will Campbell, Penn State's defensive end Abdul Carter. There you go. Thank you very much, Matthew. I appreciate that. He's got a lot of awards. Hard to keep up with this guy. He's a finalist there for the Lombardi, as well as Will Campbell, the LSU offensive tackle. We just talked about him. And CJ, Penn State's defensive end Abdul Carter, and South Carolina's edge defender Kyle Kennard. All finally. Do we think? Yeah. All right. So what do we think are the chances that Kelvin Banks comes home with the hardware, the Lombardi Trophy? What are your thoughts, gentlemen?
You got to like this group. I mean, I think you would take Kelvin Banks right now over the performance of Will Campbell at LSU. Of course, he's a really talented offensive tackle as well. But it really comes down to Kyle Kennard and Abdul Carter, because both of them have put up tremendous seasons. Kyle Kennard might be the best overall pass rusher in the entire country, hence why he's up for this award. And he's put up a great statistical season. And, it's one thing to compare sacks and tackles for a loss with that of an offensive tackle who, really you can only compare it by the lack thereof that you're going against, right? Do you allow any sacks? Do you allow any pressures on the quarterback? How do you compare the two statistically, or is it just an eye test? And if that's the case, I have a hard time seeing Kelvin Banks not at least be in heavy consideration for the award, because ever since he stepped foot on campus, he's been absolutely legit from day one. So 2 weeks to kind of figure that out for Kelvin. And of course, I think right now he should be, I think he should be the winner of this award, because Texas, again, has been very fortunate for the last 3 years to have him in there anchoring that offensive line. He's been tremendous this year.
I almost feel like it should be a career achievement award for him, right? Because it feels like he's been elite since he was a true freshman at Texas. Now, I brought this up. I mean, how often, Coach, do you see a guy as a true freshman perform and think to yourself, that guy's going to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft? That's what people were saying about him as a true freshman, and it actually is going to come to fruition. How many guys, Coach, have you said that about watching them at Texas? I think maybe Bijan was there. There's a few guys I'm sure that were that gifted, but not many.
Yeah, that's true, especially offensive linemen. It's so hard. Yeah, it's such a huge bridge to cross from high school to college. Offensive line is just, you're going against, sometimes 6 foot, 190-pound defensive ends in high school. Yeah. And now all of a sudden that are 5'2". And now all of a sudden you're going against, 6'3", 280-pound guys, 6'5", 300-pound guys that are 5'2", But I think he deserves it. I think our A&M game will be the most watched college football game of the season, period. I think if we take care of business and Kelvin has a good game, with all the people, millions and millions and millions, I sound like millions and millions. Everybody loves my gold tissue. I think a big game against A&M and a consistent game against Kentucky can certainly push him over the top.
Yeah, he'll be going up against some NFL caliber guys at A&M. As a matter of fact, we had a question. It's from Loisian, I think. Yeah, it is. Here it is. Why is Texas A&M's defense considered so good? Who have they shut down this year besides Missouri? I think it's the front, Loisian, right? As to why they considered so good. They got. We're talking about Nick Skirton, Shamar Stewart. I mean, they got some NFL guys on that D-line, on that front, right, CJ? That's why they're considered really good.
Yeah, definitely. It's the matchups that they pose for the Texas offensive line, right? It's Nick Skirton, it's Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner. These guys can get after the quarterback, and they have great success in that. They muddy up the water in the run game as well, right? That's one of the things that Texas doesn't have a lot of success with to begin with. Yep. So if you take away the run game and rely solely on the pass game, will they get after the quarterback? You could sit back and say they haven't really locked down anybody, and statistically you might be right, but that front is what's going to cause an issue. If Texas can't have time to protect Quinn Ewers, to exploit the secondary as other teams have, what's the point in even having a bad secondary in a favorable matchup there? Because it all starts on the offensive line. So, look, I think Texas A&M is going to be a tough out for Texas. I believe the line right now is about 5.5 in terms of Texas being the favorite going to College Station, but adding crowd factor, add in the noise, add in the intensity, and really the pressure to come out of that week with a win, it's going to pose as a pretty tough challenge for me.
I wonder, none of us probably know the answer to this. I wonder if by chance A&M had their senior day against New Mexico State.
I believe they did, Coach.
That'd probably be a pretty good idea. Because I'm thinking, okay, well, yeah, we're gonna do it this week, but I wonder if A&M's gonna have to do it the next week. But if they're smart, they would have had it against New Mexico State, so they could be, and I'm sure they did, because they could be dialed in and ready to go. Last home game.
Didn't think about that, Coach. You're right. I did not. Yeah, that would be smart. And not that they'd be conceding, we might lose to the Longhorns, but just so you make sure you're doing right by the seniors who are saying goodbye. I think you're right about that, Coach. Good stuff. All right. How about that? I'm going to ask you about this, Coach, because I saw today Sark said, and you were there, CJ, on the Zoom call, where he's claimed that things were feisty in practice. He said in November, for so many teams, it can feel monotonous to the players. Clearly, for our guys, it was not. Things got feisty at practice. Is that a good sign, Coach, that things are getting feisty? I'm assuming, CJ, he meant basically guys getting into it, basically, right, guys?
Heck yeah. That's a great that's a great sign. That's a great sign. You've got – there's some guys this time of the year, especially if you're not sitting in Texas shoes, they're like, yeah, I'm about ready to go on. We're not going to make it to the playoffs, whatever, but I love it. I mean, this team still got their whole season ahead of them. everything they've fought for, dreamed of, coaches recruiting for years for this moment. You can't let it pass you by. And I'm glad to see that they still got a little piss in their vinegar. I don't know what that means, but that's what my coach always told me.
Gets me fired up, Coach. I like it.
I have no idea what that means. What's the genesis, what's the origin of that saying?
I have no idea, but see, we all know what it means.
Well, I know what it means, but what's the origin of it? What's the literal origin?
I have no idea.
Oh, I thought you might know, Coach. That's a good one because coaches like that one. That's a good coachism right there. All right. How about this one from Todd? Todd, thank you for the question. Says Sark needs to take whatever points are there. Field goals are fine. They add up over the course of the game. This is a defensive team. Let the game unfold that way. What are your thoughts about that, Coach? Maybe going forward on fourth down, in scoring territory with the defensive mentality on the defensive-led team maybe isn't ideal. Maybe take the points now. I
think it depends. I think it depends on how your offense is playing. If you can tell your offense is struggling, and I happen to agree with Todd, take the points more often than we do. I think we're just now that we're down to the nut cutting, as they say.
What is that origin? That one?
Sorry about those, but yeah.
So are the doctors.
Take the points, and I think that's a great. This is a defensive team. You're right, Todd. I'm with you. Now, don't get me wrong. I love to go for it on fourth. I mean, I'm a big gambler, but you have to consider what's at stake. And if he's not feeling that our offense is in sync, and nobody will feel it before Sark will. Take the points.
Yeah. I'd be interested to see if Texas is given a 4th and 1 on their own 25 or 30, would they go for it again? I don't know, but I'd like to think that Sarkisian would coach each game the same way with that same aggressiveness, that same, I'm not going to be beat, I'm going to go beat you, right? It's coaching to win instead of coaching to not to lose, right? That's the old verbiage that you hear every now and then. We heard it under the Herman regime when it felt like they would turtle, right? That was the big word, right? You get a lead, and then everything you did there was to hold on to the lead instead of extend it or put the game away, and it came back to bite Texas. I like the aggressiveness, but again, to the conversation is you got to be smart when you are super aggressive. Yep. Going forward on 4th and 1 on your own 25 against Deion Walker, I don't know if that's the smartest decision. And I saw the comment earlier when I mentioned every offensive drive needs to end with a punt, a field goal, or a PAT. That's how I view every offensive drive for Texas. And the comment in the chat, I wish I could go back and find it, but the question was, you mean punt for the defense, right? Defense needs to be forcing punts. No, listen, punting offensively isn't bad. Right? Thank you, Matthew, for pulling it up. It's not a bad thing to punt the football. What's bad is when you go 3 and out, you don't move the rock at all. You flip the field position in that lost possession offensively. You don't waste a lot of time for your defense to get a breath on the sideline, force them to go back out onto the field. And all of a sudden, instead of being a touchback situation where the opposing offense is starting on the 20 or the 25, you're relying on a punting unit that necessarily hasn't been great this year. So you're starting at the 40. That's where it gets sticky. But if you're able to go out there, protect the rock, and as we saw against Georgia, if you give opposing teams short fields, it doesn't matter how good your defense is. They're going to be in a spot to score points because, hey, you're playing SEC opponents, right? So punting is a win to an extent offensively. Field goal attempts and PATs, that's where you're adding points on the board. You'd love to see that every single drive. Unfortunately, that's just not how the game of football works. So flipping field position is big. Holding on to the rock is big. Making sure that your defense has enough breath in it to go the entire 60 minutes is big as well. Punts, PATs, field goals, every drive needs to end with one of the 3, and I think Texas would win just about every game that they play if that's the outcome.
Good stuff, CJ. All right, getting back to the questions. Jay says there are people saying that we shouldn't be satisfied with 9-1 because we have championship implications. Yeah, I mean, I think this team they have a championship caliber defense. We know that. I think the offense is still a top 20 offense, guys. As much complaining as we do about the offense, it's a top 20 offense. We complain about it all the time and talk about the deficiencies in the offense, the inconsistencies. It's a top 20 offense. You should be able to win a national title. I'm not, and I want Quinn to play better. He needs to play better. But I do think with the offense, what it is, and your defense being as good, I do think you still have what it takes to compete and win a national title. I would be more confident if we could see more consistency from Quinn, and if Texas could start to find a groove in the running game, I would feel better about it. But I do think Texas still, with this year, because there is no true juggernaut in college football. You can say it's Oregon. Okay, we can say that. But I think I've watched Oregon, and I think Oregon can be beaten. I do. I think Oregon doesn't really necessarily scare me, but Texas can be beaten too. We've seen that. That's why I'm putting Texas in the same category. There is no juggernaut. That includes Texas, by the way. That's why I think Texas they're just as likely to win it as anybody else, but they need to get hot at the right time. And the hope is that this is the time to get hot.
Rod, I tell you, the thing that I struggle with, and I think that a lot of us struggle with, is the fact that coming into this season, we had arguably the best receiver room in the country.
Yep.
We've got an experienced, proven couple of first-round draft picks potentially in the offensive line. Mm-hmm. We had guys doing Dr. Pepper, our quarterback doing Dr. Pepper commercials, and all this stuff. And then, of course, we had C.J. Baxter. I think it's just really hard for us at this point in the season, after having so much talent on the offensive side of the field. We don't need to be top 20. We didn't sign all those guys and do all these things to be number 20 in offense. I mean, you got the best wide receiver room in the country, one of the best offensive line rooms in the country, supposedly one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Mm-hmm. You expect to be higher than, you expect to be at least be in the top 10, really top 5 in my mind, but we're not. And that's the reality that we're facing. Rod, like you said I don't remember if it was in Football Theory or in Monday's Winning Drive, but you said, you know what? There is no rest of this. I mean, it's not like we're 10 games. We played 10 games. It ain't hoping this team's going to turn into this. We are what we are, right, Rod? That's what you said. Yeah. And that was a pie in our face. Yeah, you're right. It's sobering to think about it, but what's going to change now? We're 10 games in. What's going to change? Is all of a sudden somebody going to start getting good? Is somebody going to stop, missing blocks or overthrowing deep balls or whatever? We are what we are, So let's play within who we are to win.
I agree with that. That's kind of what, going back to the take the points comment from earlier, like, nah, man, recognize who you are, take those points. With this defense, those points are valuable. That might as well be a touchdown with the Texas defense playing as well as they are. All right, Jay, thanks for the comment there. Let's take another one of our sponsors before we move on. Our friends over at South Point Dodge. We're really grateful for them for being a part of the On Texas football family. Texas football fans, you can score an easy extra point this season when you get to the point at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge has over 600 vehicles in stock right now, including a great selection of Ram 1500s, 2500s, and 3500s. Whatever your truck needs, South Point Dodge is the one-stop shop. And right now, you can get a great deal with over 50 Ram 2500s, all marked down right now over at South Point Dodge with huge savings. Right now, it's a perfect time for you to head on over there. They're in South Austin off I-35. You can go see their fantastic inventory in person, or you can go online. Make it easy on yourself. Go to southpointdodge.com. You can check out their inventory there as well. Whatever your truck needs, South Point Dodge is the one-stop shop. Whatever your truck needs, Austin's automotive everything, that's what southpointdodge.com provides for you. So check them out today at southpointdodge.com. And thank you very much for sponsoring the Winning Drive. All right, getting back to some of the questions here. This comes from RWC. Says, what would you guys do to fix the offense's woes? And does Quinn seem to throw better when he is on the move? Fix the offensive woes. CJ, what would you do to add juice to the offense? Is there one? Let's all choose maybe one thing. What's one thing you do, CJ, to add a little juice to the offense? Because I don't know about fixing it. Is it broken? Or is it just not what we expect it to be?
It's just not what you expect it to be, right? The complementary, balanced attack of running the football and throwing the football. We always knew Sark wanted to throw the rock early in games. It's been charted since he's got here. That's what he wants to do.
Yeah.
Just in the instances where you did run the ball in the past, you had a Roshan Johnson, you had a Bijan Robinson, you had a Keelan Robinson, you had a Jonathan Brooks, right? you had NFL level backs in your backfield that could carry the load. And 2 of the 3 of them should have won the Doak, right? That goes to the best running back in all of college football. Texas doesn't have that right now, right? Trey Wiseman's a good running back. Jaden Blue has a lot of, elite talents to him. Neither of them, and in this running game specifically, are going to be guys that you can hand the rock to 25 times and say, go win a football game the way that Texas had been able to in the past, right? Not against an SEC level defense. So what can you do to fix the offensive woes? Listen, I think this is kind of what you're stuck with, right? Otherwise, 10 weeks into the season, I feel like you would have figured this out.
Yep.
So is it Quinn? Could you move Quinn out in the pocket? Look, we've seen him make some pretty impressive throws on the move, so far this year in the red zone, right? That one that we just saw to Matthew Golden. We saw one against Michigan, again to Matthew Golden. Look, maybe that's a solution, but you can't roll out Quinn every single time, right? He's just simply not that quarterback when you roll him out. If pressure's not there, if the look's not there to create on the rollout. So I think you're a bit handcuffed with the running game. And as a result, you do put a lot on the shoulders of Quinn Ewers to say, hey, go fix everything. In a way, you have – I'm trying to liken this to a Billy Mays commercial, right? You got the leaky faucet, you got, a pipe bursting, and then you slap the Flex Seal on it, and it's like, hey, it's fixed. Right now, Texas fans want to do that, but instead of the Flex Seal, it's like Quinn Ewers, fix whatever the issue is. And that's in a way, it's unfair to Quinn, but that's kind of the expectation that we had coming into the year, is that he would take that next step, right? Yeah. So that it wasn't leaky to begin with. But that's not been the case because offensive line hasn't been good. Running game hasn't been great as a result. Quinn's been injured, been dinged up, came back, wasn't the guy that we saw the first 3 weeks of the year. This is just who the offense is now. So what can you do? You can protect the football. You can punt whenever you're on 4th and 8. You can rely on your defense. I think that's what you do. And as a result, you play good offense as a result of good defense with short fields and field position.
I think that's a great point that you made. CJ. We all are waiting for a hero to step up and save the day. And I don't know that there is one, that can do that. It's going to have to be cumulative effort of everybody. I think one of the things that we've talked about several times that I think is, first of all, I think Quinn does throw good. I like the bootleg action. He can get rid of the ball quick. I like to go back to the Mike Leach. A quick pass is just an extension of the running game, and dink and dunk and get yards like that, mix in some runs. But because we don't have a strong running back and a strong running game, we have to create yardage out of other plays that simulate a run, that aren't high-risk plays. But one of the things that we've talked about before, too, that I still haven't seen that I'd like to see more of is like, tight end delays, tight end drags, intermediate routes over the middle, where if it's a zone, you just stick it, in between the holes and just dink and dunk and just take it, And I think that's what we need to continue to do. And Sark's done a pretty good job of that. But I think you'll see him continue to try to find ways to move the ball in spite of the woes we're having in the running game. So that may not happen. It's like beating a dead horse, but he can create some other opportunities to gain yardage without just giving it to giving the back the ball on the duo or whatever, and just counter or power or whatever, and just see what happens with 3 yards and a cloud of dust. He doesn't operate that way. And I don't know that we have the backfield to operate that way. But I do think it's going to take creativity on Sark's and the offense's part to get the yardage that we need to win football games.
All right, good stuff, guys. I'd add more variety to personnel. You guys know I love the pony package, but I would use some of the Big 11, Big 12 packages. I would break out a 10 personnel package, the red package that he had at Alabama, 4 wide receivers, 10 personnel. I think we are very right now. It seems like we're very rigid in our personnel variety and personnel groupings. That's one thing I do, but Sark knows better than all of us. How about this? We got a couple of super chats. Thank you for the super chats, guys. How about this one? This from 214 Texas Bronco says, I feel that a lot is put on Quinn instead of helping him out with better run schemes and making the opponent drop that safety down. What do you think? Great question there, and thank you for the super chat, Texas Bronco. That's kind of what Coach is talking about. They don't really have that kind of running game, the kind of running game you impose your will on an opponent, and they have to adjust and they have to allocate resources to stop your running game. Texas doesn't really have that kind of running game. You actually theoretically can stop Texas running game or at least stall it with a light or an even box.
Yep.
And that's part of the problem. And that's why Sark is taking, since they're going to keep the numbers in the passing game to defend you in the passing game, well, that means they're giving us the light boxes, but also giving you light underneath numbers, meaning you have the numbers underneath because their guys are deep. So I'm just going to throw it underneath, like Coach said, and let my guys get the yak yards. So it's the problem with, just bringing the safety down 2-1 for Texas Bronco. They don't do it with the traditional run game. They do it with the detached screens and the quick passing game. And sooner or later, you get tired of having to come up and tackle a guy in the open field with 8 yards of cushion. And you go, all right, you know what? Let's see, what did I do? What has Matthew been doing the last 5 minutes after TJ made that point?
Hey, you got the hat too. That's a good.
Hey,
that's a
when
good.
Rod
touch.
says Matthew's a real hero, he ain't lying.
That is great.
That's
That's
great,
You know what?
CJ. Great. By the way, CJ, great analogy.
It was good.
Great
It
analogy.
was quality.
And Matthew took it to another level.
That's awesome.
That was quality right there. So thank you for the the question there, the super chat, and thank you to Matthew. That was fantastic. Also, somebody sent me this stat, and we were just talking about Quinn outside the pocket. SEC, if you look at top 3 explosive pass rates outside the pocket, Lenore Sellers is number 1. He's at 26%. Quinn Ewers is second at 16%. You know who's third? This is from 2 days ago. Vandergrift.
Oh wow.
15.6%. Watch him outside the pocket, man. Watch him outside the pocket. All right. Thank you guys for that. We're getting close to the end of our live stream here. So let me try to get through some of these questions. And we have a super chat. JJ. Thank you, JJ, for the super chats. But Coach Ship, they want to know if you're coaching Kentucky this weekend, how do you beat Texas? I want to hear this actually too.
Well, I tell you what, you disguise your coverages. Run a 3 shell, do lots of stuff out of it, and blitz. Make them beat you running the ball. Quinn has not seemed to handle the blitz very well, and that's what I would do.
Mm-hmm.
Defensively, I would blitz Texas as much as I could. I would disguise coverages. I would delay linebacker blitzes, that type of thing. And I think Texas has a hard time, with that. I really do.
He knows his stuff.
Now, that's just on offense, Texas offense. I don't know if you're Kentucky. I'm not sure how you beat that Texas defense. I don't know. I mean, you got to stop their offense and just somehow hope you can get some special team points or, whatever. But it's going to be tough to stop. It's going to be tough for them to slow down the Texas defense and the momentum they have because, like you said, Rod, they've been the one consistent in this program the entire year.
Yeah, Coach Crazy, you said that, and Blake actually posted, as Blake Monroe does a great job, Blake Monroe OTF. He posted a video of Mark Stoops talking about Texas defense, and he said the same thing you just said, Coach. He said there's no weaknesses. He said there's weaknesses on this team. We know that weaknesses on the team, but on that defense, there aren't a lot of weaknesses. And I'm with you. I don't know. What is the one thing you would do to attack the Texas defense? One thing that has seemed to get a little bit of run is I've seen a couple of teams. They do the kind of a bootleg, a rollout, and they kind of hit that deep over route. We saw it the last game against Arkansas. That was a nice route they threw. And it kind of, but the only thing about that, you got to have time. Usually don't have a lot of time. You got to have time for that route to develop, which is why I think you move the pocket a little bit for that to work. We're being real nitpicky, man. I don't think there's a weakness to attack on the Texas defense. I don't. I think I would say Arkansas started to run the ball late, and they started to run the ball behind their left guard late. That's also something. But like I said, guys, we're grasping at straws here, trying to figure out a way to come at that Texas defense, man. I would do double moves too. I think they're susceptible to the double move. You got to have time to complete it. But I've seen teams get behind the Texas secondary with double moves. And Jahdae Barron is basically running routes for people now. He's getting out of his breaks before the receivers do. I'd double move Janae Barron like 3-4 times a game.
Yeah.
I would.
I haven't seen a lot of them this year.
No, that's the way
Like
to do
you
it.
said, you got to have time.
You got to have time.
Yeah, and when you've got number 11 bearing down on you, sometimes it's kind of hard. And number 0 and
Amen.
rest of them.
I wouldn't want to be me. I would want it to be me if I was heading over to Flat Creek Estate. So let's thank our last sponsor of the evening. Did you know that the most awarded wine in Texas is actually the vineyard closest to Austin? That's right, folks. Flat Creek Estate Winery is just minutes from downtown Austin, and they've won award after award this year for their vintage wine, Super Texan. It's one of my wife's favorite wines, actually. Super Texan is now available at your local spec, so give it a try. Of course, Flat Creek is also a gorgeous venue with barbecues and wine tastings every single weekend. Perfect for a day date with your significant other or a weekend getaway with your significant other. That's Flat Creek Estate Winery. They also have their fantastic wines available over at Central Market. I know that because we do some grocery shopping there, and I saw their fabulous display. And I've actually been tasked by my mother-in-law to get some Flat Creek wine for the holidays because she's a big fan of their Super Texan. You will be too. Try it for yourself. That's flatcreekestate.com. Really appreciate them being a part of the On Texas Football family and sponsoring our the winning drive here tonight. My man CB always has good questions. We'll get a couple of these before we end the live stream tonight. He says, speaking of field goals, Coach, did Herman ever let you look into the famous green binder? Coach, yeah. Did you see this thing? And where was it? And did you see what was in it? What's the numbers in the green binder, Coach?
I have no idea.
Did it exist? Was it real?
Sworn to secrecy. Kind of like the UFO, you know. You're going to have to just let that one go.
I give you on that one. Hell no. I like that. Says, which team scored the most points on UK this year? How many? It wasn't Florida.
Florida scored 48.
Woo. DJ Lagway, right? Was it Lagway? Was the starter?
I believe it was still at the time where it was both, but Lagway had a lot of explosive plays, and I think they leaned on him pretty heavily. I don't know, man. It's an interesting team. The one thing I know about Florida is when they roll, especially with Lagway on the field, those deep shots are connecting, right? I think Lagway is actually one of the most accurate, one of the best deep ball throwers in all the country.
I agree.
But yeah, you see 48 there. One thing you don't see very often is actually you don't see at all is 250 passing yards by Brock Vandegrift in a game. You don't see it at all. You very rarely see it over 150. So listen, you see how and why they don't move the football that much. They don't have much of a passing game. So if Texas is able to score early, force them to play from behind, that's the recipe you want. The issue is they don't allow many points in the first quarter.
Yeah, great stats you brought up about their first quarter defense there, CJ. And that's one of your keys to the game. Give folks that again, because I think this is important, actually, about your first quarter key here. Yeah,
no SEC opponent has scored twice in the first quarter against Kentucky this year. No opponent has scored more than 7 points against Kentucky in the first quarter this year. They're 15th in the country in first quarter points per quarter allowed at only 2.7. Texas at 1.7. So it should give you an indication that first quarter might not have a lot of action, similarly to what we saw in Fayetteville this past weekend. But Kentucky comes out, they execute their game plan very well. More times than not, it's just the repeated attempts at offensive drives that wear down the defense with no success offensively to allow some sort of buffer for them.
Great stuff there, CJ, as always. All right, I'm sorry we couldn't get to all the questions, guys. I like RWC's chat, though, here. Can we throw this up there last? This Thanksgiving, I'm thankful for a great Longhorn defense. Well done. We'll end it there. Yes, we are. We're all thankful. Good. We should be thinking about what we're all grateful and thankful for, and having an all-time great Texas defense is one of those things. All right, we're also thankful to Matthew behind the scenes, grateful and thankful to him for doing a great job as always, because he's a real MVP. We're also very thankful to Coach for all of his wisdom and experience. Also very thankful to CJ for all of the nuggets and all of his hard work. Thankful to you guys for joining us and participating. All the super chats, really appreciate it. Sorry I couldn't get to all the questions. Tried to get to as many this week as we could, but remember, tomorrow you got Coffee and Football at 8 a.m. We got our live stream will be at 3 tomorrow, right? At 3, we'll be live from the University of Texas Co-op tomorrow. So if you are in the neighborhood, come on out and hang out. Bobby Burton, myself, we'll be at the UT Co-op tomorrow, celebrating the festivities down there. Also, thank you very much. Hell no, thank you so much for the super chat. Very, very kind of you. Also, want to thank everybody for all of the participation in the show today, and thank our sponsors as well. Thank you to FlatCreekEstate.com. Thank you to our friends over at DuckCamp.com as well. We would like to also thank Hard Grove Roofing. We appreciate them, and SouthPointDodge.com. And until next time, for Coach, for Matthew, for CJ, hook 'em horns.
Beat Syracuse tonight.